Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are, whoever you are. Welcome once again to Full Fat Spoiler Chat, the show brought to us by us, the folks here at Nerd Caliber, where we talk about one particular piece of nerd entertainment with full spoiler warnings enabled because we're going to talk about every aspect of the show, movie, whatever it happens to be, that we feel needs to be brought up or should be brought up, whether that means a spoiler or not. And generally, it always means lots and lots and lots of spoilers. So, this is Space Sweepers, the Netflix movie from Korea. If you have not seen it yet, I would suggest you bid us adieu, unless you don't mind spoilers. And if you have seen it, of course, hang around. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things about it. I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor in chief of Nerd Caliber, first person shooter on Facebook as a cosplay photographer, and Burley underscore adopter on Twitter, a couple of other places. Joining me tonight is the wonderful Ashley, if you would introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hello, I am Ashley Lauren Rogers. I am a playwright based out of Brooklyn, New York. I am also a sometimes contributor to Nerd Caliber. I've been on a bunch of these quite a bit. I think this is the first time you and I have done just a one-on-one,
I
actually,
think so.
Rodney.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk about Space Sweepers.
Cool, cool. Anybody in the chat? If you get the joke and the image behind Ashley, let us know. So, speaking of the chat, Yenny Listjowati. I know I was going to get that wrong. If you're still there, hello, welcome to the show. Kawaii Hero, welcome to the show. Oreo Milkshake, if you're still there, welcome to the show. Hailey Argueta, maybe, welcome to the show. X Sans X, we'll call you Sans if you're still there, welcome to the show. Mochi Chan, welcome to the show. And how long will this take? Generally, our show runs 40 to 50 minutes. That seems to be the case whether it's two or four of us. So even the shows where it's just me or Manny, who often is on as just the other one, um, it probably won't take less than 30 minutes. We try to get pretty deeply into all of the various topics around the shows, movies, whatever we're talking about. Let me do a quick round around other chats out there. And it looks like we're good. All right. So, let me bring up an image here, even though these things have been rolling around. Which one do we want to use to start off with? I guess we'll start with that. The one that we were using in the title. Space Sweepers debuted this year on Netflix. It was a Korean production that was apparently supposed to be released in Korea last year. And of course, COVID and restrictions and so on, it kept getting pushed back like almost every movie has, except Tenet,
Mhm.
and wound up getting picked up by Netflix to stream directly to its audiences, which it did, and became the number one film on Netflix in 16 different countries in which it was streaming. So it was very, very popular all around the world. These are some of the main characters in the show. Most of the crew of the space debris recovery vehicle Victory. And as far as I can tell, doing some research, this is an original idea by the director and writer Jo Sung Hee. And I'm going to apologize in advance for my absolute butchery of Korean pronunciations. So let me get to that. I'm pretty good at a lot of dialects. Korean has the thing that trips me up is different ways of vowel pronunciation.
Mm.
I can do consonants and I can do most. You give me a German umlaut and I'll nail it. Korean vowels are just off for
Mm.
anything I'm used to. So, my apologies. I'm going to butcher these names. Yeah, it's the way it goes.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
just jumping off of something that you already brought up, I'm curious what the reaction would have been if this was widely released in theaters, whether it would have gotten the major international release that it gets, kind of having a very captive audience on Netflix, particularly in the worldwide market. I'm curious whether it would have done, and that's again just speculation. There's no way to know, but yeah, I wonder what the reaction would have been if it got a wide theater release and then people had to kind of find it.
So I think it would have managed to get the release.
Mm-hmm.
That I think would be the case
Yeah.
because of the popularity. I mean, Parasite, you know, you know, being nominated for an American Oscar as an international film,
And then winning. Yeah.
and yes, and winning.
Yeah.
You know, the awareness of the Korean film market is huge right now. And if it did, it probably would have had a really good, regular advertising marketing campaign here in the States. You know, whoever released it here in the States, somebody would have to pick it up. You know, Warner Brothers, Buena Vista, something. I think it would have done pretty well, and I think word of mouth, if theaters were open in the United States, I think word of mouth would have spread like wildfire on this, because here's the spoiler alert. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is just an absolute blast, thrill ride of a movie. And I think a lot of people would have jumped all over that. Now, there's a lot of other things about it too that are good, bad, very interesting, and so on, that make it a deeper topic or topic for deeper discussion like this. But from just that standpoint, this was a hoot, as we used to say.
Yeah, like I can definitely see that. I'm just like, and again, like we want to talk more about the piece itself. I'm just like, because it's a huge like space opera, sci-fi piece, it's just like, wow, would that have been looked at as like such a niche market that they're like, yes, popularity of Parasite, but Parasite was a family drama. Ooh, could we? Yeah, like I'm curious, but again, all of that would just be speculation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It would be interesting. It's one of those alternate worlds,
Yeah.
Come on, Wanda, open it up and let us know.
This one piece of information.
Just
That's what you need to use here. That's what you need to use all of those powers for.
Yeah, we don't need you to create, the Fantastic Four or X-Men or anything. Just tell us how this would play if it was out in the movies. Jo Sung-hee, the director, wrote this. Apparently started working on it about 10 years ago when he saw a piece on the news about space junk. And about how, space debris is tracked and why it's not really a problem and how, it might become one. It's called the Kessler syndrome. The idea that if you destroy something in space in orbit, the amount of debris that would create would make anything else in orbit at risk. And the more you do, it's this like logarithmic curve. And I didn't even realize it had a name like that until I watched some other show about something completely different, and they were talking about, orbital debris problems, and it's called the Kessler syndrome, or Kessler situation, or something like that.
The Kessler run, yeah.
The Kessel run, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the one.
I think it probably comes from the Kessler Space Telescope, but
yeah, that makes way more sense.
Yeah, than the Kessel run, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, hey, people who do space stuff like Star Wars.
They do.
That is a statement I will put on. I will say with confidence.
Exactly. I think that's safe. So the basic gist of the story is it's 2092. Earth has been and continues to go downhill as a place to live. Soil problems, water problems, etc. Unlike the movie Interstellar, which has Earth as a similar condition, humanity is not going to, try to get to another star where there might be a planet they can actually inhabit, because I'll give them this, that's just not in the cards, but they can get into orbit. And a essentially single corporation, UTS Corp, builds habitats in Earth orbit. And a vast majority of the human population moves out into these habitats. But there's enough habitats and stuff up in orbit, that space debris does become a problem. So there are a small fleet of these independent garbage people, basically, that you know go all around Earth orbit, picking up large chunks of space debris, which they salvage. So it's how they make a living, and also it's a benefit, and they keep space lanes clear, and keep habitats from getting destroyed.
Yep, job needs to be done. They're going to get paid to do it.
Exactly. And during a recovery of a piece of debris from a ship, I think, they stumble across a young girl in a spacesuit in a storage bin. After, because they'd already seen the warning, correct?
Yeah.
Before they find it. After they had seen a warning that a humanoid android in the form of a young girl, who is in fact a weapon of mass destruction, like hydrogen bomb scale, was lost or stolen or something from the place, lab, facility, whatever that she was in, and everybody should be on the lookout. This crew, the Victory, finds this person, called Dorothy by the news media, but whose name by the person that created her is Kot Nim.
Which, the second they realize that, because I forget if, because I am kind of messing up the timeline a little bit. I do forget if they knew ahead of time and they just saved a girl and then realized after seeing again, like repeat, oh yeah, that's right, this is Dorothy, or if they see the news broadcast as they're like saving her. But the second they realize this child could be a hydrogen bomb, they book it to different ends. I love that moment because this child is just a child and she's just like, what's happening? Stop running from me.
Mr. Krakowian, welcome to the show. And yeah, so this movie is also very funny.
Yeah.
There's wonderful sight gags, wonderful actual jokes. The android, I guess, robot. So in the credits in IMDb, there are two people credited for this character. One is credited as Robot, and that's a guy who I think is the mocap actor. And then there's a woman actor who is credited as Bubs, which is the name of the robot that you see on your screen there, or what the English translation of what they call the robot. So I'm assuming that that woman actor did the voice.
Well, either she did the voice or she was Bubs at the end.
That could be too.
Because there was a and again, right. Hey, we're spoiling this. At the end, Bubs is able to afford whatever Bubs needed in order to visibly resemble a human female. And so therefore that could have been the actor portraying them, or it could be, like you say, it could be the voice.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think you're right. I think that that actress was in fact portraying Bubs in a human woman suit. Good point. So, and in fact, the voice never changes, so it could very well be that the person who did the mocap also did the voice. But Bubs is just about as funny as K2SO is in Rogue One. I mean, Bubs is hilarious. And written as like K2SO or any of the droids in the Star Wars universe as an intelligent, conscious being. So 100% able to be, as snarky as they want to be, as funny, and they played up really well.
I will say, because I knew instantly there was something going on, because I'm always really reticent about robot characters, like robots as humans. It's like, all right, I'm willing to go along for the ride. But at the same time, there's something in my brain that's always like, this robot is a toaster. And I realized that, like, again, like you say, artificial intelligence, and there's a certain like coherence that this robot absolutely has that I will respect. At the exact same time, there's a part in my brain, and I don't know what it is, that is like, this robot is a toaster that can move around and harpoon things and can be sarcastic. But like, immediately I knew that this was a robot that had that sentience, that had that artificial life or that artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
because Bubs was saving up for something and refused to, like, it's like, no, this is my money. Like, why are you trying? Why are you always going into my money whenever there's a problem?
So ultimately, the story is about what the crew of the Victory decides to do with Dorothy or Coat Nim, and discovering what Coat Nim really is, and it's a very interesting story. It kind of telegraphs itself at times, but once you actually do get the reveal of who or what Coat Nim really is, it's still a pleasant reveal. Even though it was kind of like, oh, okay, that's kind of what I figured. And it's just a blast watching all of the space sweepers compete for what ultimately turns out to be the piece of debris that they find Dorothy in. Is you know, it's a Disney ride.
Yeah. I will say I am so glad I went in knowing absolutely nothing. Like, I really, going in, I was like, okay, is this about janitors in space? Like, is this like, there's a video game where you like are in on a spaceship and you actually like clean up the entire spaceship. I can't remember the name of the game offhand, but like, I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's that. And then jumping in, it was just like, because if someone had described to me the plot beats of what happens, I would say this is ridiculous and I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But like, having experienced it and actually seeing the way that it's crafted, in the way that they do things, in the way that they build up the story, it works really well. It's a very well executed film.
It is really well executed. I'll get that's one scene that that I showed. Here's another one. There's Bubs. There's kind of the main character in the middle. It's a pretty ensemble cast, but it's ensemble in the sense of Firefly, in which it's clearly an ensemble, but there's also a central character. And Tejo, who is the one in the middle sitting down, is pretty much the central character. But next to Tejo, the other person in here is Captain Jang. Look at the production design here. This is, by all reports, as far as I can tell, is a $21 million budget movie. It has CGI effects that puts a lot of Star Wars stuff to shame. And
that sounds so small. I'm sorry. That's like nothing in Hollywood. Like, I'd kill for 21 million, but like, wow, holy crud.
Well, now you know why sci-fi and other streaming platforms will go to, I can't remember the name of the company in Vancouver that did all the Battlestar Galactica stuff, or go to Weta Digital in New Zealand. As opposed to paying, Industrial Light and Magic. If you own Industrial Light and Magic, Lucasfilm, Disney, sure, it makes sense to use the people that you own. And you can create a giant wraparound LED, projection screen, so you don't have to use a green screen ever. And when the Mandalorian is shooting at giant things up there, the sight lines match up because he's actually looking at the giant thing that you are. This is all done green screen, and and they did all of these special effects. They hired actors who are pretty well-known Korean actors. I don't know what scale they get over in Korea, but I'm gonna take a wild guess here that they had to pay a decent amount of money to get Thorin Oakenshield. That's the bad guy, UTS Corporation CEO, pardon me, Sullivan.
No worries. I love evil Elon. I'm doing a good thing. It's like, now give me your blood so that I might create Mars the way we need. Exactly. Destroy this woman. Destroy this child. It's like, this guy's great.
I mean, it's Richard Armitage is the actor, Thorin Oakenshield from the Lord of the Rings. And I got to assume he's well known enough, and off of Lord of the Rings and other stuff, that that took a chunk of that 21 million,
Mm-hmm.
and they still pulled off just the fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
fantastic imagery, CGI special effects, just wonderful work.
Just also kind of on that note of getting a lot of varied actors, this film, more than any other film I think I've ever seen, like I need to think about that, but I think more than any film I've ever seen feels like an international film. Like it feels like that, partially because everyone is speaking a different language until it gets translated, partially because they reached out to a lot of folks from a lot of different countries to bring them into the project. And it really shows and it really feels, again, more than most films I've seen.
Yeah, and they do a great job right at the beginning, because
Mm-hmm.
somebody's fails
Mm-hmm.
is they note that everybody speaks their own language because everybody's got a universal translator in their ear, like Star Trek, like
Mm-hmm.
original series Star Trek. Um, and so it's wonderful, that it's like, oh, just there we go. Let's get rid of all of this. Nobody has to worry about why the Korean crew is speaking Korean, and the um, a lot of the other crews, particularly the people that work for UTS, are speaking English. I think there's a crew. One of the put this image up here. Where these are. This is one shot of a whole bunch of the sort of range of different space sweeper, you know,
Mm-hmm.
debris catchers and tugs. Um, I think there was a Chinese
Mm-hmm.
speaking crew at one point.
Yeah, there was like a whole crew of like one crew that just all spoke different languages at and to each other.
Yeah,
Like there was that the Russian crew, there was the like, and they were all like, it seemed like they were all working together or trying to work together, and you could tell they were all literally like understanding exactly what they're saying, even though they are speaking a different language.
yeah.
And it was yeah.
And that was a wonderful little touch. A great bit of writing. So here, writers, here's an example of how to do this sort of stuff where nobody looks at you and goes, "That's a plot hole."
Mhm.
You have somebody go, "That's not working. What did you just say?" And then somebody fixes it and go, "Oh, okay." You know,
And what's so funny, we when we started watching the film, immediately I thought something was off because there was a like there's a white woman in the beginning and she's speaking a language that was like, I think to me I was hearing it as Italian, but like I could tell that her voice was off, and it was because we had it set to like a dub. And because it was set to dub, it was so confusing because everybody's speaking a bunch of different languages. But like because it was dubbed, they actually in the dubs they change all the actors' different languages.
oh,
So like to give you that impression, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what? Like I need to look into that a little bit more. But in my experience, what I noticed was this person is speaking a different. And then when we switched it to subtitled, she was speaking English, and it was her actually speaking voice. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is a level of detail that is fascinating and fantastic. Like,
I gotta wonder
mhm,
whether that's a Netflix level of detail or the Korean producers. So,
mm-hmm.
um, all right, so we've actually kind of drifted off of the normal structure of the way we do these things. So I'm gonna pull us back, which is fine.
Sorry, that's yeah.
It's
Throw the harpoon, Rodney. Get us back in.
exactly.
Get our
Just
space
to let you know,
debris
this
back.
references that while all of these ships capture the debris in some fashion, often using something like a grappling hook or a harpoon, the Victory uses Bubs to throw a harpoon because, spoiler, Bubs was a war droid, and is insanely strong, tough. It's which is another plot element that comes in later on as well, which is really cool. But yeah, Bubs is outside on the outside of the ship, holding on and hucking. And yes, physics, it's not going to work that way. We get it. So, but there's a
Yes,
few
there are
things.
noises in space. We get it. Uh-huh. Yep. It's fine.
Yeah. There are a few other things, like that I always kind of go, eh,
Eh.
you know. But if it's a fun enough movie and it's not really super egregious, like J.J. Abrams letting people see planets that are blowing up 1,000 light years away in their own sky in real time, then I just could have I let it go. Firefly had artificial gravity on their decks. Okay, fine. So does this. Most of the ships in here. Okay. Now, but getting back onto track. So at this point, what we usually do is we say what we like or didn't like, what worked for us, what didn't work for us in the show. We've kind of covered some of that, but it's okay to rehash. Ashley, let's look at what did you like about it. What didn't you like, if there was anything. What worked and what didn't.
Yeah, and obviously, like you said, I've already like mentioned a lot of these things, but I would say like what I liked about this is the level of comedy, the level of like just detail that they put into it. Not just the world building is there and it's very detailed, but also the detail on how they speak, how they communicate, how they do this, how they make it work, and really to an audience member not feel like it's one singular film. It feels like there's a lot of different elements in there that are just really interesting. So to me, that's the thing that I like the most. I liked the character of Bubs, but I'm always, and this is a thing that I talk about a lot with folks, like when you have a character who is trans and they're also a robot, or they're also a wood nymph, or they're also a something something, it's tough because I realize part of that is so that they can create a trans character, and so that people can have, if they have a problem, they can kind of create that disconnect so that they grow to love Bubs, and they're like, oh, maybe trans people are all right. But at the exact same time, it creates that disconnect, and it makes it look like trans and non-binary folk are robots, are mythical creatures, are these things that are not human. And so I did like Bubs. I liked Bubs a lot, but at the exact same time, there is a certain extent that it's like, okay, because you're the only character that is very explicitly queer in some way, it's tough to kind of be like, it's good representation because it's just that's a robot.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and there are plenty of other opportunities in there where you could infer from some action of some of the human characters that they might be gay or lesbian or whatever. But like, it's a stretch. It's an inference. There's no other explicit statement of anything like that. And even Bubs, to some extent, there's a question about whether or not you can call something that has no gender trans once it decides it has a gender. Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, it's trans from non. It's
yeah,
still trans.
to an extent, yeah.
Yeah,
There's like it's because people, because in order for us to really look at something or someone and say like, okay, I can identify with this, they have to find themselves in it. Like there was this really interesting. I'm going to go a little off a tangent. After Star Wars, the new trilogy had come out, people were harshly debating whether BB-8 was a boy robot or a girl robot, and it was just like, that is a robot. I don't know what to tell you. And it's a similar principle where it's like, wait, but that's a robot. Right. I don't know.
I mean, even C-3PO, who sounds like a stuffy British dude, is not gendered. It's a robot. And everybody thinks R2D2 is like a scrappy little boy. Yeah. It doesn't even make any understandable vocal sounds. It's a robot. Or
now, what I will
say,
it's a
droid. It's an android. Yeah.
Now, what I will say where it deviates with Bubs is absolutely they built him in a way that is, apologies, they built Bubs in a way that is supposed to kind of resemble the way that Bubs is built, almost resembling like a male figure. Bubs is built for war. Bubs is doing all these things, so it makes sense for that. But then when Bubs says, no, actually, that's not who I am, it is Bubs asserting, and it is Bubs saying. So absolutely, the trans story is there, but it's so tough because Bubs is a robot, there is that level of disconnect that people can and often do have, which is why whenever I say I have a problem with that, that's why I have a problem, is because people disconnect and say, well, that's not a human.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I get that. And I think that it's one of those where it's like, oh, hey, look, this is a kind of a properly serving this community message. Nope, not quite. It's like, yeah, nope, keep going. You can do it. You can do it. That having been said, seeing Bub just go, yeah, that's the body I want, because that's what I picture myself as a human. Like
Mm-hmm.
not even any question, and no question by the crew either. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the Victory doesn't care. You know, the other crew members in the Victory, they don't care.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the other thing that's great about Bubs. They're all like, yeah, great. Hey,
yeah.
cool. Let's help you do this. But we need to pay off this bribe, so we're gonna take the money from that to pay off the bribe.
So I was about to jump into that, and which gets into sort of message and tone and so
Sorry.
on. And so I want to, I'll save my commentary on that for later, and I'll talk about. So, like you, I thought the world building was fantastic. You know, like almost any kind of science fiction, I have problems with it, but uh, in this case, they were really limited. The idea that you know, they kept this into essentially Earth orbit. That
Mm-hmm.
you know, in roughly 120 years, not 120 years, in 70 years, 72 years, you know, we might have a whole bunch of colonies up in orbit, but we're not really much beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
That nanotech is a thing and a well accepted thing and a pretty broadly used thing, but it also has problems. Um, uh, and sometimes there are really smart scientists. Like you know, there's a plot element. There's a particular kind of nanotech that has sort of gone rogue, but it's all uh, gathered at one of the Lagrange points, and that makes sense. A Lagrange point is a point of stable orbital mechanics between the gravitational effects of the moon and the Earth. And you know, it's entirely possible that things can get not trapped but wind up in this Lagrange point. Um, and to have one of the or to have this particular nanotech cloud thing in a Lagrange point, it's like okay, all right, somebody's watched their Gundams and their which by the way, shout out to all of those, particularly the Gundam series, for I mean, when they go super science, they go crazy super science, but otherwise they do their science 100%. Um, and this is clearly inspired by anime like that. This is pretty much the anime movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is an anime Space Janitors or something like that, which essentially has the same general concept. Nothing like the same overall plot of evil corporation and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But the story of people working to clean up debris in space. Um, so I love the world building. I love the cast.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've seen any of them other than Armitage.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Thorin. Um, but when they first introduced Captain Jang, I'm going, why do I know this person? Captain Jang is played by Kim Terry, who was Goe Shin in Mr. Sunshine, the best Korean historical drama, romance, action story I've ever seen.
Okay.
If you have not seen Mr. Sunshine and you are at all interested in historical drama, with American gunship diplomacy and Yakuza samurai and Japan taking over Korea, and it's amazing. And she plays the female lead, who is both you know the daughter of a very noble family and a kick-ass revolutionary. Um, and as soon as I realized that, I was like, "That's why I love this actress." And she nails it as Captain Jang. Captain
Yeah.
Jang is tough as nails.
Oh, I love Captain Jang.
So good.
Oh, yes.
And the mechanic, the character's name is Tiger Park.
Mm.
Wonderful, both comic relief, but also again, everybody in the Victory has this extremely badass backstory, including the sort of lead Teho, who is a very tragic badass backstory. UTS Corporation has a sort of private military police that is the ultimate police force when things need to be done, and they are child soldiers. They are taken as children, fitted to these power suits, and basically are soldiers from probably puberty on. And he was one of these child soldiers. And his whole backstory is tragic about the loss of his wife, loss of his daughter in a space accident of all things, because of a piece of debris and
And specifically that he could potentially find his daughter
yes,
out there amongst the debris, and that's what's fueling him, is getting enough money to finally hopefully find his daughter.
yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, ooh.
And here's one of the other things I like about it is they let Tejo be a pretty horrible person. So I'm jumping a little bit ahead into theme. One of the themes of this is family, and sort of family is who you make it.
Mm-hmm.
And of the crew of the Victory, he is the very last one to sort of give up on this idea that family is only who came from my blood, holding on to the idea that he might be able to find his daughter, even though there's zero chance whatsoever she's alive. It's not possible. And is horrible. I mean, he's willing to sell Cut Nim. He's he just does all sorts of pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Disturbing, I guess, things. For somebody who ultimately is supposed to clearly be the sort of hero of this piece.
Mm-hmm.
And they let him. The script is lets him be somebody you really don't like.
Mm-hmm. And I think why I really like him, and why by the end I'm so into his story, is because they show us in the beginning, this is not a good guy. This is not a decent guy, at least anymore.
Yep.
And even then, like even when he was doing okay, he was not a good guy. And so finally, when he makes the decisions that he makes by the end, they show that he's become a good guy. And that's sort of like in writing terms, that's how you can tell the protagonist. That's who has the biggest change.
Right.
And with him, like you absolutely see that big change because they let him be this really horrible person in the beginning.
Yeah, he has a huge redemption arc. It takes a long time for him to get there. But there are a lot of, particularly in Western media, it's pretty uncommon to find somebody who is really just objectively a terrible person allowed to become a better person, and ultimately a much better, a heroic person.
Like I think, so sorry, I think a lot of American media tries to do that, but they get so hung up on let's make horrible people, and then they forget how to give them a redemption arc, or like particularly like I'm thinking of this whole like trend of morally gray protagonists, like like Breaking Bad, and like even It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's like, okay, these are supposed to be like people you don't want to be, but then you kind of root for them, but then should I be rooting for them? And that's not what we see here. We see someone who has a genuine change,
right,
and it feels right.
Yeah, that's a good example. Breaking Bad. He doesn't ever. Walter White doesn't ever become a specifically better person. He does something that kind of redeems him by rescuing Jesse. But even then, his redemption comes at the old Messiah trope. He has to sacrifice himself to redeem himself. So again, that's a problem with Western media, is that true redemption from true evil can only come through sacrifice, and a lot of Eastern media doesn't have that problem. So I love that. I love the fact that they allowed the characters to develop in this way and present them in particular ways. And of course, I love the CG effects. It still blows my mind that this thing could look this good under a $21 million budget which I guarantee a million of which had to go to Armitage. Um, Armitage is one of the things that I don't like, but it's not him. I loved his acting, and I thought the character, while again, you know, almost cartoonishly evil, um, Armitage brought a range to that. Is the fact that he was at the founding of UTS Corporation apparently 100 years ago. So he's 100 years old or more, and is kept in the young-looking state that you saw him in the picture by the use of nanotechnology, which is doing something to him, and it's doing something that is almost turning him into again anime-esque demon creature. I mean, never like turns completely. He always stays human, but his voice really changes, and they never explain that. That's just left. They don't even really explain that it's his nanotech, although you make the connection because they talk about the nanotech that keeps him alive. A nanotech is a very important part of ultimately the whole story, in that Cottonham is in fact a product of biological engineering and nanotechnology, who through sheer coincidence has the ability to cause things to heal, essentially growth to happen, and therefore her father, who actually made her into this in trying to save her life, wants to use her to heal the earth, which would get in the way of Sullivan's plans to create a new home for Earth on Mars, and just so happens that UTS would control everything, because it's building everything on Mars. So that's why he wants her dead, and that's the whole plot behind this thing. That kind of characterization and plot element just left hanging there really bothered me.
Yeah.
It didn't stop my enjoyment of the movie, but I kind of really would like to know, because other things were reasonable science fiction-y, like the sort of rogue nanotech, and we find out exactly what Cottonham is because she can actually control that. Things like that. It's like, oh, okay, cool. It's stretching the boundaries of science quite a bit, but still, it makes sense.
Which, yeah, there was a lot going on, so I wonder if maybe that might have been a thing where it's like, we got to save time, we got to cut some things.
Yeah,
but you're right.
This is 2 hours and 16 minutes long.
Yeah,
folks. This is not a short movie, and it's a thrill ride from start to finish. It does not.
It does not feel like 2 hours and 16 minutes.
Not even a bit. This is like it's like a 90-minute Netflix movie. You go, oh wow, it's been more than 2 hours. So that's the only things I don't like about it are because there's so much going on in here that they do leave some things hanging. And I kind of didn't like the facile way they solve the big problem at the end. Blowing up Sullivan, he should have known what was coming. I mean, granted, they pulled a super fast trick on him. But still, he's supposedly this, strategic genius. And there are plenty of times where they get stopped or stymied in their attempts to flee or whatever, without any explanation of why anybody found them or knew where they were. And you've just got to sort of assume that it's because Sullivan is such a strategic genius that he's got all of his bases covered. So I found that a little facile. Still super fun.
Which, tying it into your other point, if that is the nanobots taking over and making him more like just reactionary rather than thinky, which is not a word, but it's just like the strategist that he is.
Yeah.
That would make sense. But again, I'm attributing a thing that is like I have to make those jumps as opposed to the movie informing me.
Yeah, except that
Specifically.
you're right.
Yeah.
He does actually get more and more frantic as things seem to get further and further out of his control. So yeah, maybe. Um, but those quibbles aside, there's almost nothing I don't like about this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's smart. It's fantastically well acted. It's you know the lighting. Again, going back to just this lighting in this meeting with Sullivan and a reporter. Um, you know, this set design and lighting. This is Firefly, and even then the movie Serenity, even one step further advanced. It's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. It feels like the closest we've seen so far to a real Cowboy Bebop live action adaptation, which I know Netflix is doing.
Right.
I'm very excited about. But like,
if they come up with anything close to this,
yeah,
I will be much less worried. Put it that way.
Yeah.
So now let's get into, to wrap it up. Let's talk about the things that we do at this point: theme, message, tone, and so on. Ashley, did you discern a theme out of this, and did they stick to it? Did they present it properly? Was it a win, or was there just nothing there other than a lot of fun?
I mean, there's definitely something there. I think that there were a lot of little themes. Like, I'm sure that there is one that was their driving factor. To me, it might be something that you had mentioned before, that idea of the chosen family. But I think also another major one, if not the real one, is this idea of healing. Because the entire idea is they're trying to, and the idea of healing being something that people will try and stop. Like, people want you to not heal. People want you not to be able to do that. Like, you look at the Earth, you look at all of, like, the not Elon Musk, the Armitage guy specifically does not want the Earth to get better.
Yep.
And so for me, I think a lot of it is stopping people from healing and how you have to push against that.
I think that makes sense, because I thought about that. I didn't consider that as one of the major themes until I just realized that you could also put Tejo's story in there, as it even applies to people who don't let themselves heal. Because there's nobody getting in his way of healing except himself. So yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that's as strong as the idea of family, and the difference between chosen family and blood family. I also think a strong message, whether it's a theme or not, that this sort of presents, but then doesn't follow through completely on, is the idea of corporation bad, independent worker good. Except that, like a lot of movies or shows or anime in which the independent workers only affect any huge change if they unite, and the corporations, their world, and the people in it probably wouldn't be alive, and their world wouldn't exist if it wasn't for UTS building these space habitats all in orbit. So I think they kind of stumble on that message, but it's the power suit wearing corporate jackbooted thugs, the Sullivan himself, the message that what he wants for his corporation is more important than even the entire planet Earth. They sell that corporate evil thing really high. But that same corporation is responsible for making sure every one of them had a place to live. So,
but also keeping the Earth as a wasteland and like hurting the people that are still on the earth and not caring about them. So it's definitely like, yeah, there are layers that I don't know that it, like you're saying, I don't know that it pulled enough back on to really make something, but it also sort of puts this not Elon Musk character in this place. That's just how I'm going to refer to him.
Yep.
But like, it put him in this place where, yes, exactly like you say, like, oh, he's doing some good. He's creating a space for people, for some people,
Right.
and actively hurting others. And that's where it's like,
Right.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
true. Whether he started building these habitats, whatever, 70 years ago or whatever it happened to be, um, as part of a really long game to become de facto emperor of half of the population of humans, though half that's living in orbit, then yeah, that's okay. I guess we don't give him the benefit of the doubt because it was all just part of his long-term strategy. Um, so I think that pretty much wraps up our coverage of this. I think we've got nailed down just about everything we need to say. Um, I highly recommend it, Ashley. Where do you?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I totally agree. I think folks, if you've got the time and you've got the energy and you haven't watched it yet, I really think you should watch this.
Yeah, yeah. If you just watch it for a one of the best anime-esque, even though it's not based on an anime, live action things ever put on film.
Yeah.
So that's it, folks. Let's see. Our next, I have to bring up my document. Can't remember what we're doing next. Our next show is going to be about The Stand.
Oh yeah.
So The Stand wrapped up 2 weeks ago. So we'll look at that, compare it to the original series, and so on. That's next Thursday. Before that, next Tuesday, we of course have our Nerd Week Live nerd news show, and boy, already we're loading up on the news.
Whew, a lot has happened.
A lot has happened. Thank God it's not quite the the dumpster fire that the nerd news was the week before. But it's still early. We still got plenty of time.
Yeah, weekend hasn't come yet.
Exactly. So Ashley, if you would say goodbye and tout what we need to tout.
Absolutely. So goodbye, everybody. If you are interested in some of the stuff that I'm doing, Scowl, my stage combat oriented fighting league, is doing a show. We're not actually fighting each other. We're doing sketch comedy, weird stuff. We're doing a live stream at scowlfight.com. That's going to be Monday night. And then we're doing a live stream actually talking about this very topic on the Is a Transphobic podcast. If you're part of our Patreon, patreon.com/isatransphobic, you can come in, chat, listen to our live stream, watch the video. We will be releasing it live a week late. We will be releasing it a week later, just the audio though. So if you want to watch the video, you want to see us, join our Patreon.
Cool. Excellent. I suggest you folks do. And of course, Rodney Brown, editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber. Good night, folks. Stay safe. Please, people in Texas, get any kind of help you need. There are places out there that are helping. If you don't even have enough power left for a phone, if you can safely walk to any warming station or whatever where you can at least get warm and find out the information you need for any kind of food relief, water relief, things like that, please do, but please stay safe. We're getting the last snowstorm is now reaching us up here in New England, and it's going to be a typical New England, like 3 to 6 inches, and for us that's nothing. Obviously not the case down in Texas. So please stay safe, and everybody else all around the world, wash those hands, wear that mask or a couple, and stay socially distanced 6 feet apart. Please stay safe, folks. Until everybody gets a chance to get vaccinated, it's still going to be a problem. So that said, thank you all for joining. Thanks for the comments in the chat, and we will see you either next Tuesday or next Thursday or some other time.